You are listening to the Memoir Method podcast, the place for writers, readers, and anyone who appreciates the collective power of our stories. In this podcast, we explore the impact of memoir alongside an examination of writing techniques and strategies used in the genre. Whether you are a writer looking for inspiration and guidance or a passionate reader seeking meaningful connections through shared experiences, the Memoir Method podcast is your go-to conversation spot. I'm your host, Charlotte, editor, writer, and the heart behind Charlotte Writes. Let's get started.
This is an episode of the Published Memoir mini-series where I take memoir that you can already find at the bookstore and examine what works, what doesn't work, and why in published memoir. Our book right now that I am examining with you is Careless People by Sarah Wynn Williams. This was published in March of 2025 by Flatiron Books. And if you missed the last episode where I went into this memoir with you, this is a memoir by someone who worked at Facebook. It's a behind the scenes tell-all memoir of Meta and the author's time there. If you haven't yet listened to that first installment of this series, I highly advise that you go back and listen to that episode. I've really tried to make these episodes short, but understanding the foundation of a memoir is crucial in being able to engage with it critically in this way. My intention for this series within the Memoir Method podcast is to look at published memoir and teach you how to do the same, teach you how to think critically, how to approach published memoir with an editorial eye so that you can decide what you want to pull into your own memoir writing for yourself. So today I want to go into the narrative style that Sarah Wynn Williams uses in Careless People. One of the most distinct elements of Careless People is how the author uses tense in her narrative. Most memoirists, I'd say like 99% of memoirists, do default to using past tense when they are writing. This is something that has already happened. It is something they have experienced. Again, this is creative nonfiction, and so they will write it in past tense. Sarah Wynn Williams, however, goes for present tense in her memoir, which I find is such an interesting and intentional choice. The present tense here accomplishes a few things. She does not insert many retrospective insights. One of the benefits of using a past tense is you can thread in the current version of yourself as an authority in the story. She doesn't do that as much in Careless People. And I have a lot of questions actually as to why she chose that. I'm going to speculate on that in a minute. But we are very much in her head at the time of the events, and we don't see much of the wisdom that she has now. She has worked hard to keep us in the moment with her as she is experiencing it. And there could be a few reasons for this editorial choice. It could be more immersive for the reader. We know that she doesn't work there anymore. That we do start off knowing that she doesn't work there anymore, but we don't really know what led to that break with Facebook. So there's some suspense in that way. And I did find this book highly compelling when I first read it because I did fall into that voyeuristic spill the tea category of a reader, which I talked about in the last episode of this series. And the present tense did keep me invested in the narrative. I listened to this book and I listened to it pretty quickly. On the flip side, using present tense could be read as evading culpability for her role in Facebook's moral decline. I've heard that criticism from other readers in my life who have read this book. I did have some book club friends get frustrated and impatient with this narrative style because they just couldn't comprehend why she would stay on with a company that treated her so poorly and that was also supposedly so misaligned with her values. And I think those are really valid questions that a reader is going to have because the reader is coming into this book having a pretty good idea that Facebook is not an altruistic company. I don't know of anyone who thinks that social media generally improves communication, improves community, improves the world. So we're coming in as 2025 readers knowing and being aware of the role that social media and algorithms have played in even like on an individual way and in a familial way, but also in very much a national and global way as well. And so at least for me as a reader, I was coming into this with a pretty jaded opinion already of Facebook. And I came into this book ready for my derision, for lack of a better word, to be validated by her story. And it was. But also, I think it's very valid for readers to say, well, why did she stay so long? And she doesn't really address that. If she had written her memoir with more past tense, she could have threaded through more of an authoritative narrator voice that could have gotten ahead of the reader's objections by addressing them first. When you are writing a memoir, when you're telling a personal narrative where you as a character has made perhaps significant mistakes or choices that the reader could be critical of, you want to get ahead of that. You want the reader to know, hey, I see this too. I'm not blind. I see this too. And ideally kind of pull in some wisdom and some context for some of the choices that you've made. I didn't get that a lot in Careless People. And again, I think the present tense, I don't know if it served her as well as it could have, because I've seen some of those criticisms about the book in a few different places, that why did she stay on so long? And she doesn't really address it because her narrative style did not really give her room to address it, if that makes sense. This leads into the next narrative element that was really prominent for me, which was how she used characterization in her story. Please note there's so much overlap between memoir and fiction in the way that you tell a story, and it is important to know how to write other people, especially when those people are real. And in the case of Careless People, the other people she writes about are rich and powerful, and as the title indicates, very careless. And I actually get a lot of questions from authors that ask about being sued or litigation related to their memoir and perspective. They don't want to get in trouble legally. Almost always, for the writers I work with, I assure them that that's really not a big deal, because memoir is creative nonfiction and it relies on the person's memories. It's very easy to protect yourself that way. If you are writing something that could harm the reputation of another person in a major way, then you will want your claims to have receipts. I'd say most memoir writers that I work with are pretty ordinary people, and the people who could be hurt by what they write are not in a position to legally sue for libel, because the standard for proving libel is pretty high. But with Careless People, we have two clear villains, both of whom are very, very real. We have Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg. These people are powerful people whose reputations are very important to them. So important, in fact, that Meta tried to prevent this book's publication in the first place. They tried to file a legal motion, injunction. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but they tried to prevent Flatiron Books from publishing this book at all, which is so funny to me, because it was that news that actually pulled Careless People onto my radar as a reader. And so they made a big stink about it, and that's actually going to bring in more readers for Sarah Wynn Williams here. For a major publisher to take on this tell-all memoir, they had to have had a team of lawyers double and triple check their bases to make sure that they had everything in line, so that if and when they do get sued, they have the receipts to back it up. Because it is okay to publish work that is going to affect the reputation of someone else if you can prove what you are saying about them. For the most part in Careless People, I think Sarah Wynn Williams tells her experiences and tries not to editorialize it. She rather tries to let the reader come to their own conclusions about Mark and Sheryl and the Meta empire through the stories that she tells. And it does not paint a good picture for Mark and Sheryl, which is why Meta got real mad. And in addition to the villains of the story, Sarah Wynn Williams is the heroine. You are the protagonist of your story. And she characterizes herself as the plucky upstart turned oppressed, harassed, and trapped executive. It is a very distinct way to characterize yourself. And I am not sure how effective a choice this was. Like I said earlier, my book club was highly skeptical of her critical thinking skills and felt that she was trying to sidestep the accountability that her thesis clamors for from Meta. She wants everyone to know how morally bankrupt Meta is. They are only self-serving. They see the negative effects on a global scale that come from their products, but they don't take accountability for it. And that is a very important message. It's an important angle. I've talked with a lot of readers who feel that she needed to take more accountability for her own participation in that. And that doesn't really happen in Careless People. When you are writing yourself as a character, you have to be honest about who you were then, who you are now, and how you became that person you are now. Careless People had a very specific angle and purpose to the narrative, and it could leave a critical reader with some side-eye, thinking more critically, thinking, I don't think that this author went far enough. I don't think that she took enough accountability. So again, I'd be really interested to talk with Sarah Wynn Williams one-on-one and get into her head about why she chose to characterize herself the way that she did, because her book did spark a lot of critical thinking and conversation with its readers, but maybe too much as far as the author is concerned. Does she want herself to be criticized in this way, or does she want herself to be seen as a put-upon heroine? So these are just all things to think about as you are figuring out the characterization in your memoir as well. Careless People illustrates for other memoir writers just how intentional you get to be with narrative style and voice. The storytelling choices that Sarah Wynn Williams made were very much on purpose. So you get to decide for yourself what techniques will create the impact that you want for your reader. If you have read Careless People, do you think that her narrative techniques were effective? What would you have changed about the storytelling style? What did you like that you would want to replicate in your own memoir manuscript? These are all great ways that you can engage with another published memoir in a critical way as a memoir author yourself. In phase 2 of my signature memoir method program, I do take writers deep into the narrative side of storytelling, teaching them the narrative techniques and frameworks that will help them bring their own story to life. I will drop a link in the show notes for you to register for the Memoir Method. Phase 1 of the program is currently instant access. And the work that we do there, I illustrate a bit in the first installment of the Careless People published memoir episode. So go check that out to get a feel for what we do for your memoir inside of phase 1 of the Memoir Method. And again, that is currently instant access. I'll be running phase 2 live later this summer. And this is where we will dive deep into all of the fun structure and narrative tools, including some of the things that we talked about in today's episode. You can also binge listen to my free private podcast series, Published. This is a separate feed from the Memoir Method podcast. 4 short episodes that you can binge in under an hour that will elevate your perspective as a memoir author and give you your own behind-the-scenes look into the publishing industry. So that is my quick and dirty rundown of Careless People. If there's more that you want to talk about with Careless People, slide into my DMs. If there's stuff that you think I missed, I'd be happy to do another installment for Careless People. And if not, I will be diving into another memoir in August. And if you have suggestions where that could be, again, slide into my DM, slide into my email. I would love some suggestions if there's ones that you are particularly interested in having broken down through these frameworks that I use in the Memoir Method. So thank you so much. I will see you next time.
You've just listened to an episode of the Memoir Method podcast. The Memoir Method podcast is presented by Charlotte Writes. If you liked what you heard, the best way to support the show is to subscribe through your preferred podcast player. And if you're feeling especially inspired, I'd love it if you left a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Leaving a review really does help other readers and writers like yourself find the show. If you want to continue the conversation, you can find me on my website at charlottewrites.co or on Instagram at charlottejane_writes Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time. And remember that you have a story that matters.